Many years ago, Earth was a place of chaos. Humanity was on the brink of destruction. The world was divided, weak, and full of conflict. But one day, everything changed. A fleet of alien ships appeared in the sky, hovering over Earth like dark shadows. They were the Zorvans, an ancient species that had traveled across galaxies for centuries. Their mission was simple: take what they wanted, use Earth's resources, and leave. The Zorvans were ruthless, intelligent, and technologically superior. They believed Earth was nothing more than a primitive planet, filled with weak humans who could be easily controlled. At first, their plans worked. They took what they wanted, using Earth's technology and resources to fuel their own empire. But as they continued their work, they realized something strange was happening. The humans, despite their weaknesses, were beginning to fight back. The aliens underestimated Earth's inhabitants. They thought they had crushed any hope of resistance. The Zorvans never imagined that something as simple as human determination could be a threat to them. In the end, the Zorvans were forced to leave, taking their tech with them, thinking they had nothing to fear from Earth. They had no idea that this would be their biggest mistake. Years passed. The Zorvans thought Earth would remain as it always had been, weak, divided, and helpless. But they didn't know that during their absence, Earth had changed. Humanity had not been idle. Earth's people had grown stronger, smarter, and more unified. They had developed new technologies, discovered strange abilities, and unlocked secrets they didn't even know existed. The humans had evolved. One quiet day, a ship appeared in the sky. It wasn't like the ones the Zorvans used before. It was different, more advanced, sleek, and silent. It moved with purpose, like a shadow gliding over the world. The humans watched it from below, confused at first. They had forgotten what the Zorvans looked like, but the ship was a clear sign. The aliens were coming back. The world held its breath as the ship descended. It landed in the middle of a deserted desert, far from any major city. It was strange that they didn't land near a population center. Was this a sign that they were being careful this time, or was it just another part of their plan? No one knew, but one thing was clear. The Zorvans were back, and they wanted something. A small group of humans, experts in technology and security, gathered quickly. They knew they had to act fast. They couldn't let the Zorvans take anything without a fight. But they also didn't understand the true danger. The Zorvans had returned, not just for their old tech, but for something much more valuable. They had come for the secrets of human evolution, the very thing the Zorvans had thought they had destroyed. The humans were confused. How had Earth changed? How had they evolved? They didn't know what kind of power lay within them now. But they would soon find out. As the Zorvans began to approach the area where their ship had landed, a strange energy pulsed through the air. The people who had been watching from afar felt it too. A sudden rush of power, a tingling in their bodies that they couldn't explain. It was as if something deep inside of them was awakening, something that had been dormant for years. The very air around them felt different, like the world itself was reacting to the Zorvans' presence. The first few humans to arrive at the landing site didn't know what to expect. They had weapons, yes, but they had never faced anything like the Zorvans before. However, as they stepped closer to the ship, something amazing happened. One of them, a scientist named Dr. Sarah Larkin, felt a sudden surge of energy inside her. Her eyes widened as she realized she could move faster, think clearer, and understand the alien technology around her without any effort. It was like a flood of knowledge had entered her mind, and she instinctively knew how to use it. Before she could share her discovery, another person, a soldier named Mark Davidson, stepped forward. He felt the same surge of power. His body seemed to react on its own, moving with unnatural speed and strength. He could feel every muscle in his body working at its peak performance, far beyond anything he had ever experienced. It was like the power of the earth itself was flowing through him. The others around them began to feel it too, an awakening, a connection to something bigger. And that's when they realized the truth. Earth had evolved, and it wasn't just the people who had changed. The planet itself had undergone a transformation. The power of the Earth's energy, once dormant, was now alive and active. The Zorvans had no idea what they were about to face. As the aliens moved closer, confident that they could reclaim what was theirs, they failed to notice the shift in the humans. The humans were no longer weak. They were no longer the helpless beings the Zorvans remembered. Earth had evolved, and now the Zorvans would have to face the full force of what they had ignored. The stage was set for a battle like no other. The aliens were here to take their tech, but they were about to learn that they had underestimated the very planet they thought they had conquered. The Zorvans had come back, but Earth had already changed in ways they could never have imagined. The ship stood still on the desert floor, a silent monument to the return of the aliens. Its sleek, dark shape shimmered in the sun, as if it were a shadow come to life. The Zorvans, confident and calm, began to emerge from their craft. Their eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the surroundings, waiting for the humans to approach. But they had no idea what was about to happen. They expected resistance, of course, they always did. But what they didn't expect was the strange energy now flowing through the very ground beneath them. For the first time since their arrival, the Zorvans felt something they hadn't anticipated, an unfamiliar presence, something ancient and powerful. It wasn't in the air or the atmosphere, but in the land itself, as if the Earth was alive and watching them. The humans too felt it, but they didn't know what it was at first. It started as a strange sensation in the back of their minds, like an itch they couldn't scratch. It was the same energy that had awakened inside Dr. Sarah Larkin and Mark Davidson earlier, but this time it spread quickly. The closer they got to the ship, the stronger the feeling became. Sarah stood frozen for a moment, feeling the sudden pull in the air. It wasn't fear, it was something else. Something deep within her, like a powerful force that had been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment to emerge. She looked at her hands, and for the first time, she saw them differently. They didn't feel like her hands anymore. They felt like they had been enhanced, filled with energy and potential. She felt more alive than she had ever felt in her entire life. Mark, standing beside her, felt it too. His body surged with energy, every muscle alive with power. He could feel the ground beneath his feet, the subtle vibrations in the earth, as if the planet itself was responding to the Zorvan's presence. He clenched his fists, and his entire body seemed to hum with the potential for something greater. This wasn't just strength. It was something more, a deeper connection to the earth, to the very essence of the world around him. As they walked forward, the Zorvans began to notice the strange changes in the humans. At first, they dismissed it as a natural response to fear or anxiety. After all, humans had always been unpredictable. But the closer they came to the humans, the more they realized something was wrong. These humans were not the same as the ones they had left behind. They weren't the weak, scared creatures they had once conquered. One of the Zorvans raised a hand, sending a signal to their ship. The ship's interior lights flickered, and the sound of whirring machinery filled the air. A large door opened, and a strange device began to rise from the depths of the ship. The Zorvans had come for this, an ancient artifact that could turn the tide of any conflict. It was a device capable of manipulating time itself, a technology beyond anything humanity could comprehend. But as the device powered up, something strange happened. The energy within the humans began to resonate with it. The ground beneath their feet vibrated again, but this time it was different. The humans weren't just reacting, they were connecting with it. The artifact, once a symbol of the Zorvans' dominance, now seemed to react to the humans. It was as if the earth had chosen its side. Sarah took a step forward, her eyes narrowing, as she felt the pull of the artifact. The device pulsed with light, casting long shadows across the desert. For a moment, she hesitated. She knew she should be afraid, that they were outmatched. But that feeling inside her, the power she had unlocked, pushed her forward. She had a choice to make: step back and watch Earth fall, or stand and fight for everything they had built. Mark was the first to move. Without thinking, he reached out, his hand grazing the device. It hummed under his touch, and a shockwave of energy rippled through the ground. The Zorvans watched in shock as the humans began to glow with an ethereal light. It was as though the energy of the earth itself was coursing through them, strengthening their bodies, their minds, and their resolve. Sarah stepped forward beside Mark, her eyes now filled with determination. The Zorvans were beginning to understand. They had underestimated humanity in the worst possible way. The humans were no longer simple creatures to be controlled. They were a force of nature, a power greater than anything the Zorvans had ever encountered. They had thought they could come back to reclaim what they had lost, but they hadn't counted on the fact that Earth was no longer the same. The artifact hummed louder, and the desert air crackled with energy. As Sarah and Mark stood together, feeling the power of the Earth flow through them, they realized something. The fight had just begun. The Zorvans might have come to take their technology, but they were about to learn that Earth had evolved in ways they could never have imagined. With a final pulse of energy, the humans' powers peaked. The ground beneath them rumbled as if the planet itself was giving them its blessing. The Zorvans took a step back, suddenly unsure. The battle for Earth wasn't going to be as easy as they had hoped. The humans had changed, and they were no longer afraid. The air was thick with tension as the humans and aliens stood facing one another in the vast desert. The Zorvans, calm and confident, had expected to encounter resistance, but nothing like this. The humans before them were no longer the fragile beings they remembered. They were different now, stronger, more determined, and radiating an energy that the Zorvans couldn't comprehend. For a brief moment, silence enveloped the scene, broken only by the distant hum of the Zorvans' ship. The artifact pulsed with an almost magnetic force, casting a soft glow on the ground. The humans felt it too, the power inside them growing stronger with every heartbeat. There was a strange calmness in the air, as if the Earth itself had paused to witness the beginning of something much bigger than anyone could have anticipated. Then, Sarah stepped forward again, her eyes locked on the Zorvans. The power inside her surged. She could feel the connection to the land beneath her feet, to the very air she breathed. Everything was alive, and she was part of it. The thought filled her with determination. Mark followed closely behind her. He was no longer just the soldier who had come to fight. He was something else now. The transformation inside him had been gradual at first, but now it was clear. He was stronger, faster, and more attuned to the world around him than ever before. There was a quiet strength in his every movement, a certainty that hadn't been there before. The Zorvans hesitated. They had never faced an enemy like this. Their ships and weapons were designed to crush civilizations with ease, but now it felt as though they were walking into a storm they couldn't control. The humans weren't just fighting for their survival. They were fighting for something greater, something they had no way of understanding. Then, without warning, Sarah raised her hand, and a wave of energy surged from her. It wasn't a weapon, at least not in the traditional sense. It was a force, a ripple in the air that seemed to carry with it the power of the Earth itself. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and for the first time, the Zorvans felt the overwhelming weight of the planet's energy. The aliens staggered back, eyes wide in disbelief. This wasn't just a fight for technology or control over Earth. It was a battle for the very essence of the world. And the humans were winning. The Zorvans tried to regain their composure. Their leader, a tall figure with sharp features, barked an order. The Zorvans moved quickly, positioning themselves into formation. They were no strangers to combat, but this was unlike anything they had encountered before. They fired their advanced weapons, but the energy from the humans was already too strong. Every attack bounced off, unable to penetrate the invisible shield of power that surrounded them. Mark grinned, feeling the pulse of the energy inside him. It wasn't just the Earth's energy. It was his energy now. He had become one with the land beneath him, one with the air, the wind, the very Earth that had once seemed so distant. He took a step forward, raising his hand as if to challenge the Zorvans directly. He didn't need weapons, he didn't need technology. All he needed was the power of the world at his fingertips. The Zorvans were beginning to panic. They had expected to find a weakened Earth, ripe for the taking. Instead, They found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't control, an enemy that was no longer afraid. They had underestimated humanity, and now they were beginning to see the full extent of that mistake. Sarah's eyes narrowed as she looked at the leader of the Zorvans. She could feel his fear, even if he tried to hide it. He had always thought of humanity as weak, easily subdued, but now he saw the truth. Humanity was stronger than they had ever imagined, and the Earth itself was their ally. She took a deep breath and held out her hand. A brilliant light exploded from her palm, sending a shockwave through the air. The Zorvans faltered, their footing unsure as they tried to hold their ground. The humans were no longer just resisting, they were pushing forward, reclaiming their planet. But the battle was far from over. The Zorvans regrouped, realizing that they needed to adapt quickly. They called for reinforcements from the ship, and soon, new alien soldiers began to emerge, their armor glinting in the sunlight. They moved with precision, a well-trained force ready to take back control. But no matter how many of them appeared, they couldn't shake the feeling that the tide had already turned. The humans, too, were beginning to feel a shift. Every pulse of energy, every movement of their bodies, felt more controlled, more powerful. It was as though the Earth had chosen them, and now it was time to prove it. Sarah and Mark shared a glance, unspoken words passing between them. They knew what had to be done. The Zorvans might have come to take what they believed was rightfully theirs, but they were not prepared for the true strength of Earth's inhabitants. They were about to learn that humans weren't just defending their home. They were ready to protect it at any cost. The Zorvans might have had the technology, but the humans had something they couldn't comprehend: unity, power, and an unbreakable connection to the Earth itself. As Sarah raised her hand again, the energy around her intensified. It wasn't just her power. It was the combined strength of every human standing beside her, every person who had fought to make Earth a better place. And in that moment, it was clear. This was the beginning of something far greater than a battle. It was the dawn of a new era for Earth. The Zorvans might have come for control, but they were about to lose everything. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the desert as the battle continued to intensify. The Zorvans, once confident in their technological superiority, were beginning to understand just how much they had underestimated humanity. The humans, empowered by the Earth itself, stood united against the alien invaders, their newfound strength growing with every passing moment. Sarah could feel the pulse of the Earth beneath her feet, the rhythm of the planet's energy flowing through her veins. It was as if the entire world had awakened in response to the Zorvans' arrival, and she was its voice. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the power of the Earth guide her. The land was alive, and it was clear now that humanity had a unique bond with it, one that no alien force could break. Beside her, Mark stood ready. His senses were sharper than ever, and the once distant hum of the Earth now resonated in every fiber of his being. He could feel the wind, the vibrations in the sand, the subtle movements beneath the surface. It was like hearing the heartbeat of the planet itself, a steady rhythmic pulse that reminded him of humanity's place in the grand scheme of the universe. As Sarah opened her eyes, she felt a strange connection with the other humans around her. It was as if they were all part of something bigger, a collective force that transcended individual power. The humans weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting for something far more significant. They were fighting for their home, for the Earth that had protected them for centuries. And with every passing moment, the Earth was responding. The Zorvans, on the other hand, were beginning to falter. Their once pristine armor seemed less intimidating, their weapons less effective. No matter how much technology they wielded, it wasn't enough to compete with the power that the humans had unlocked. The Zorvans' leader, once so assured in his victory, now stood uncertain, watching as his forces struggled to regain control. It was then that Sarah felt a sudden shift. The ground beneath her feet trembled slightly, as though the Earth was sending a warning. She looked around, sensing that something was about to happen, a change in the battle that would determine its outcome. "Mark," she said quietly, her voice steady. "Something's coming." Mark turned to her, his face filled with determination. "We're ready." Just as Sarah finished speaking, a loud rumbling sound echoed across the desert. The ground shook, and a massive surge of energy erupted from the earth itself, sending a shockwave through the air. The Zorvans, caught off guard, struggled to maintain their footing as the energy pulsed around them. And then, from the depths of the earth, something extraordinary began to happen. The sands in the desert seemed to come alive, shifting and swirling as if they had a mind of their own. It wasn't just the ground that moved, it was the earth itself, rising up to defend its people. The Zorvans watched in horror as the desert floor cracked open, revealing ancient roots and vines that had long been hidden beneath the surface. The plants, once dormant, now surged upward with incredible force, wrapping themselves around the Zorvans' legs, pulling them toward the earth. The Zorvans attempted to break free, but the vines held fast, their strength surprising even the aliens. Sarah and Mark exchanged glances, understanding that the earth had just made its move. It wasn't just the humans who were evolving. It was the planet itself. The Zorvans had thought they could conquer Earth with their advanced technology, but they had failed to realize one crucial thing. They were not alone here. The planet had its own defenders, its own guardians, and now they were rising up to protect the world from invaders. As the vines continued to entangle the Zorvans, Sarah felt a surge of power flood through her. She raised her hand once again, and the energy surrounding her intensified. The ground beneath her feet seemed to respond, vibrating with purpose. The earth was no longer a passive observer. It was an active participant in the battle. Mark, feeling the same connection, stepped forward with purpose. The humans had found their strength, and it wasn't just in their own abilities. It was in their bond with the planet. Together, they were stronger than any alien force. Together, they would protect their home. The Zorvans, struggling against the forces of nature that had begun to bind them, looked around in panic. They had never seen anything like this before. No technology, no weapons, could fight against the living, breathing power of the earth itself. They had come to reclaim what they had lost, but now it seemed they were losing everything. Sarah and Mark stood tall, their hands raised, the energy flowing through them and into the earth. The wind howled around them, as if the very elements were on their side. The Zorvans, once so sure of their victory, now realized that they had miscalculated. They hadn't just underestimated the humans, they had underestimated Earth itself. The vines continued to tighten around the Zorvans, pulling them closer to the ground. The aliens struggled, their attempts to free themselves growing more frantic with each passing moment. But no matter how much they tried, they couldn't escape the hold of the Earth. The planet had decided it was time for them to leave. Sarah and Mark stood resolute, watching as the Zorvans were slowly immobilized by the Earth's ancient forces. The humans, empowered and united, knew that this was their moment. The moment when Earth's defenders would rise and protect the planet from any force that sought to harm it. And in that moment, the battle for Earth was over. The Zorvans would never again underestimate humanity or the power of the Earth. The air was thick with anticipation as the remaining Zorvans struggled to free themselves from the Earth's grasp. The once proud and powerful invaders, masters of advanced technology and space travel, now found themselves helpless against the very planet they had sought to conquer. The vines, sentient and relentless, held them in place as if the Earth itself had decided it would no longer tolerate their presence. Sarah stood tall, her heart pounding with the realization that this battle was reaching its peak. The power she felt coursing through her wasn't just her own. It was the collective strength of humanity, the energy of every living being on Earth. The Zorvans had come to reclaim something they thought was theirs, but what they had failed to understand was that they had awakened something far greater than they could ever imagine. Mark, by her side, felt the same connection, the same surge of power. It was as though they were no longer just individuals. They were part of something far bigger. something ancient and unstoppable. Together they were the defenders of Earth, the protectors of a world that had long remained in the background of the universe's grand stage. As the Zorvans' attempts to break free from the grip of the Earth's energy grew weaker, their leader, the tallest and most imposing of the invaders, spoke in a low, gravely voice, trying to rally his forces. "This isn't over," he said, his words a desperate plea for control. But there was no conviction in his tone, only fear. He could sense it. He could feel the Earth fighting back with a force that no weapon could ever match. Sarah's gaze remained fixed on the alien leader. She could see the doubt in his eyes now. It was clear. The Zorvans were losing their grip on this situation. The balance of power had shifted. The Earth, once a quiet observer, had awakened. And it was no longer a world that could be conquered. It was a world that would defend itself at all costs. Mark stepped forward, his voice steady but filled with authority. "You came here to take what was never yours. But what you've discovered is that Earth isn't just a place, it's alive. And you've underestimated it." His words were simple, but they carried weight. The Zorvans had come to Earth thinking it was a quiet, unassuming planet. They thought they could simply take what they wanted and leave, just as they had done with countless other worlds. But Earth had evolved. And now, it was fighting back. The Zorvans' leader looked around at his men, his confidence shaken. The once unstoppable force was now nothing more than a group of invaders trapped in a world they could no longer understand. Their weapons, their ships, their technology, none of it could help them now. Sarah took a step forward, feeling the ground beneath her vibrate with power. "You can leave," she said, her voice unwavering, "or you can face the consequences of underestimating this planet." Her words weren't just a threat, they were a promise. The Earth had decided its fate, and there was no turning back. For a long moment, the alien leader said nothing. His eyes searched the horizon, looking for a way out. But there was no escape. The planet had made its decision. And with that, the Zorvans knew they had no choice. They couldn't fight Earth, not like this. The leader nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping in defeat. We will leave. But know this. This is not the end. We will return, and we will be ready." His voice was filled with bitter acceptance. He had lost. And now, he had to live with the consequences of his failure. Sarah didn't flinch. "Then we'll be ready too," she replied, her voice calm but resolute. "But next time, you'll have to face the full force of Earth's defenders, and we will never back down." With that, the remaining Zorvans retreated slowly as the vines released their hold. They had come to Earth to claim what they thought was rightfully theirs, but they had underestimated the planet and its inhabitants. Now, they had no choice but to leave, defeated and broken. As the last of the Zorvans vanished into the distance, Sarah and Mark stood side by side, watching as the planet settled into a peaceful silence once more. The Earth had won this battle, but both of them knew that this was only the beginning. The Zorvans may have left for now, but they would return. And when they did, humanity would be ready. The Earth had proven that it was no longer the fragile, quiet world it had once been. It was a force to be reckoned with, a planet that would fight for its survival and the survival of its people. And as Sarah looked at the horizon, she knew one thing for sure. Humanity's true strength had only just begun to awaken. The days following the departure of the Zorvans were filled with a strange mix of triumph and uncertainty. Earth had won, but the victory was not without its cost. Humanity had faced an enemy far beyond anything they had ever imagined, an advanced race that had come to claim Earth as their own. But in the end, it wasn't just humanity's strength that had prevailed. It was the bond between Earth and its people that had tipped the scales. Sarah stood at the edge of a hill, looking out over the vast landscape. The horizon was painted in shades of gold as the sun began to rise, casting its first light over the world. She could feel the power of the Earth beneath her feet, a connection that had become even stronger in the aftermath of the battle. The planet had changed. Humanity had changed. and together, they were ready for whatever came next. Beside her, Mark watched the sunrise in silence, his mind racing with thoughts of what the future would hold. The Zorvans had left, but they had made it clear that this wasn't the end. They would return, and when they did, they would be ready. The question was, would humanity be ready for them? "We've come so far," Sarah said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "But there's still so much we don't know." Mark nodded. "We've only just begun to understand the full extent of what we're capable of, and what Earth is capable of." He was right. The power that had awakened in them, this new connection to the planet, was still something they were learning to control, but it was growing stronger every day, just as their bond with Earth was. It wasn't just a power to defend themselves with. It was a power to shape the future. "I think it's time to gather the others," Sarah said after a moment, her eyes glinting with resolve. "We need to prepare. We need to show the world what we've learned." Mark turned to her, his expression serious. "What do you mean?" "We've been fighting for survival. But now it's time for us to take the next step, to evolve, to lead." Sarah's words were full of purpose. "The Zorvans won't be the only ones who see Earth's potential. There will be other civilizations, other races watching us now. We have to be ready to show them that humanity and Earth are no longer to be underestimated." Mark stood silently for a moment, taking in her words. He knew she was right. This wasn't just about defending Earth from invaders. It was about becoming something more, something greater. "The world needs to see that we're not just survivors," Sarah continued, "but a force in our own right. And Earth is more than just a home. It's a powerful ally." Sarah turned to face him, a look of determination in her eyes. "We've proven that the Earth isn't just a passive planet. It's alive, and it's protecting us. Now, we need to understand what that really means. We need to connect with others, share what we've learned, and make sure we're prepared for whatever comes next." Mark smiled, a spark of excitement igniting within him. "And we will. We'll show the universe what humanity and Earth can do together." Together they walked down the hill, heading toward the others who were already gathering nearby. The world was changing, and they were part of that change. There was no going back. What had started as a fight for survival had evolved into a mission for something greater. And the universe would soon see just how much Earth had to offer. As Sarah and Mark reached the gathering, the others turned to them, their faces filled with anticipation. The group had grown since the battle with the Zorvans. More people had joined, all connected by the same understanding, the same power. The world was beginning to change in ways they couldn't have imagined before. The Earth's response to the Zorvans had awakened something deep within humanity, a potential that was only now beginning to unfold. "We have to start preparing," Sarah said, her voice steady but filled with purpose. "It's time to learn more about the Earth's power and what it means for us. We need to connect with the planet on a deeper level, and we need to share that knowledge." The group nodded in agreement. There was no hesitation now. Humanity had not only survived, they had evolved, and the future was theirs to shape. As Sarah looked around at the faces of the people who had stood by her side, she felt a surge of hope. They were no longer the people they had once been, fragile and uncertain. They were the protectors of Earth, its defenders, its allies. And together, they would face whatever challenges came their way. In the distance, the sky shimmered with the colors of the dawn. It wasn't just the light of the sun rising. It was the promise of a new beginning, a new era for humanity and Earth. The universe had seen the power of Earth's defenders, and soon, the rest of the galaxy would know. Humanity was no longer just a species struggling to survive. It was a species evolving beyond its limits, ready to take its place in the stars, and no one would dare underestimate Earth again.